We're Wild on the Go in Cape Disappointment State Park in Washington State.
We were actually here yesterday as well, but there's so much to see and do here, we decided to come back today and hike one of the trails we didn't have time to get to yesterday.
We're currently on the North Head Trail, and while we're hiking today, we'll go ahead and show some of the highlights from our visit to Cape Disappointment State Park. So right from the start, we can see some of the quintessential flora of the Pacific Northwest. We've got sword ferns growing here. Right behind them is some salmon berries. Got some red alder growing, salal growing through over there. A bunch of Sitka spruces back there. We've seen some rather large Sitka spruces on this hike. Very grown over and dense. This is a temperate rainforest. Not sure you can get the scale of this thing, but that is a beast.
Yeah.
It's like the base of it's got to be what, like about maybe 9-10 feet in diameter, something like that.
Pretty large.
We're here at a fairly good time, going on late July. Yeah, summertime, and it's quite an area for weather, but we missed all the major mud here, fortunately, because we've been looking at coming up here and it's been muddy.
The summer gets some rain, but the winter months here, the fall, winter, and spring, they get over 7 feet of rain in that 9-month period. So as you can imagine, the trail probably stays muddy quite a bit.
Yeah, it's probably like a river coming through here. Yeah, the weather is extraordinary in this area with the cyclones, as they're called here, which is kind of in comparison to like hurricanes that you'd get like in the southeast United States and those areas. These cyclones, they don't get all the fancy names like Bob and Mary and whatever. They're just called storms, but they can get up to 160-mile-an-hour winds. We were in one in 2007 that had 140-mile-an-hour gusts. It was absolutely crazy up in this area, but
yeah, another weather phenomenon that's very common in this area is fog. This area gets some of the most foggy days of anywhere in the United States, over 100 days a year of fog.
Yeah, it's easy to see how that would happen here. I mean, we're right at the convergence of the Columbia River as it meets the Pacific Ocean. And what a mighty thing it is, because the Columbia is the West Coast's largest river going into the world's largest ocean. We came up from the south to get to the Cape, so we had to cross the mighty Columbia right at near the mouth of where it goes into the Pacific. And we went over the Astoria-Megler Bridge, and what a bridge it is. It's over 4 miles. It's quite a drive. One of the highlights of Cape Disappointment State Park are the 2 lighthouses.
Yeah, there are 2 lighthouses. It's the only place on the West Coast where there are 2 lighthouses within 2 miles of each other. And the reason for that is they built the Cape Disappointment Lighthouse and discovered that when ships started coming from the north, down from Puget Sound area and such, they were not able to see the lighthouse in time.
What a disappointment.
Yeah. And so they had to build the North Head Lighthouse to provide light for the ships coming from the north and let them be able to maneuver their way into the mouth of the Columbia River.
Probably didn't take them too long to figure it out that,
that was needed. Well, it actually took them 42 years to build the second
Yeah, well, to build it, but they probably figured it out sooner than that.
Yeah, figured it out right away, but the 42 years to build the other lighthouse, and that North Head Lighthouse is one of the most well-preserved lighthouses on the West Coast. So it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, we had a great time visiting both of the lighthouses.
The lighthouse is not the reason for the disappointment. The park actually got its name from a British explorer, John Meares, who arrived here, thought he had come upon the river convergence into the ocean and saw it and thought it was just a bay. Didn't realize it was actually the river, and so he was very disappointed that he did not find what he was looking for, even though he actually did. But
So
it still got named Cape Disappointment.
Yeah, so it was Meares' disappointment.
Yeah.
But others knew that that's exactly what was going on, at least some of the earlier people, and then later on, the explorers got with the program.
But we have not been disappointed in Cape Disappointment.
Not at all. It's just absolutely wonderful. I was talking to Susan earlier about, you know, one of the fascinating things is, of course, the whole nature of how these this river and the ocean are converging here, and just makes such an extraordinary place. I mean, so majestic and powerful. And then all of the history in this area, whether you're going back to like the Chinook Indians or, you know, the early settlers, and it's just fascinating to see how much has gone on in this area.
Yeah, which kind of brings us to the other highlight of this area is the Lewis and Clark history. There's actually a Lewis and Clark Discovery Center, interpretive center here, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, we've been in there years ago, and we recently just visited some of it, and there's quite a lot of that in the Pacific Northwest and all along the Columbia and on the northern Pacific coast. It's fascinating to see how people lived back then and how they fared in such a formidable place,
Yeah.
you know, and in some ways.
Well, it's obviously very rich in the Lewis and Clark history, because their objective for their mission was to reach the Pacific Ocean, and of course this is where they did that, so it just makes sense that there's a lot of historical sites and information here regarding that journey.
Just think, they once walked on this.
I don't think they walked on this bridge.
Probably not. I'm glad it was built for us, though.
Yeah.
We're a lot less rugged explorers, I guess you'd say. Now, this is quite the transition that they've engineered through here and built for us. Very nice. It goes up top here, all the way up.
Yeah, this is quite a bridge system.
Yeah, still going. Yeah, if you hear us out of breath, it's because there's a 15% grade that we haven't quite yet experienced yet, because that's on the way back, which I've been thinking about, is that we got to go more uphill, but there have been a little bit of uphills in these switchbacks, but for the most part we've been going down, which, as you well know, that means we're going up to get back out of here.
One of the hikes that we did yesterday was from the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center over to the original Cape Disappointment Lighthouse. And looking across, it didn't seem too difficult, but you had to go all the way down one side and then all the way up the other side.
Yeah.
Down in the bottom, on one side was a place they call Dead Man's Cove, which is a really cool little beach inlet. A lot of people there having a good time on the beach.
And you can walk out
from the wind
and wade through the water there to a little island, and it just, you can't help but think about earlier people that did that same thing, that got on the little island there in the cove. And then we also came upon a small Coast Guard
station, yeah.
Station there, and that was nice to see, but it's just kind of right there in the middle of the park as we're going through.
They had a great little area and a little bay tucked in off the river there, nice and protected to have their station.
And to my joy, we're coming upon some mosquitoes now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's not fun. We've already had some bouts with mosquitoes this year, and unfortunately they affect Susan in a harder way than they do me, even though I seem to be very much on their menu. They have a greater negative effect on Susan, so I'm trying to avoid them as much as we can.
Yeah, I can start to hear them buzzing around.
Yeah. Yeah, the foliage is so dense in here. Everything is piggybacking off one another. And speaking of which, on these giant Sitka spruce trees, the sword ferns are just growing out of and on top of the branches. Just really something. Watch your step coming down through here.
Yeah, that's crazy. It looks like a shelf for the ferns.
Yeah. They're like, I'm getting up out of all this moisture. I like moisture, but maybe not the soggy ground as much. So they sought higher ground. Yeah, and a lot of the plants in here are so robust, they're just enjoying it. One thing to note too is, you might have heard in old survival sayings and things like that about the moss growing on the north sides of the tree, which is a good way to tell north in some areas and things like that. But when you get into rainforest, good luck with that, because that moss can be 360 all the way around the trees.
That would have you running in circles.
Yep. Kind of reminds you a little bit of the redwoods when you go through this, just the way the trees struggle for survival and hang on. But a little bit different, but somewhat the same. And it's interesting because we took a picture yesterday of Susan inside one of the trees. That was really nice. That's what really reminded me of the redwoods.
Guess we didn't miss all the mud.
Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of back in here a ways. We're a mile in now, easy, and a little bit of a catch-all for all the moisture here. So after all, it is a rainforest. We're nearing the end of our hike and our visit to Cape Disappointment State Park and the banquet that we've provided these mosquitoes. We're gonna go ahead and take off, and we'll be sure to put some links in the video description so that you can check out some of the wonderful things about Cape Disappointment State Park.
We were not disappointed at all. Please remember to share, subscribe, and click on that little notification bell.
Thanks for watching. When you said you were taking me to Waikiki Beach, this isn't what I had in mind. Now I am disappointed.